Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another television series review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This series is from Norway, Norwegian language English subs, released in the year 2026, directed by Øystein Carlsen, and this series is called Detective Hule. So Detective Hule is based on the Joe Nesbo books of the Detective Harry Hule series. This television series is actually based on the fifth book of the series called The Devil Star. So in this we have Detective Hule, who is a deeply troubled man. He has a lot of alcohol problems. The chronic alcoholism in his life has led to traumatic events, and he's trying to be a better person, not only for himself but also the love of his life, Raquel. So Raquel is trying to keep him off the drink, and he's slowly getting better, but unfortunately the demons of his past are catching up. And so the reason why he is so high in demand is because he's very good at catching killers. And so the Oslo Police Department come across a series of ritualistic murders. Now they believe that Harry has the ability to crack this case because no one else can. And so Harry is reluctantly drawn back into the detective life. He's investigating these crimes, but the more he investigates, the more he actually realises there's corruption within the Oslo Police Department. And so he has two things he has to juggle: finding out where this corruption is coming from and also trying to find this killer. But not only that, he also has to try and rekindle that romance with the love of his life. And so all of this juggling and at the same time trying to stay off alcohol is going to be very difficult, but whether or not Harry can do it is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Detective Hule. Joe Nesbo is my favourite author by far. He is the master of suspense and the master at just keeping you glued to the book. And so he's my favourite author, and the Harry Hule series is absolutely fantastic. Initially I thought it was Harry Hole, but it's actually pronounced Hule. And so all this time when I was reading these books I was, Harry Hole, but now it is Harry Hule. And so when I was reading these books from a young age, I just thought to myself, this is absolutely fantastic. This is everything that you want from keeping your attention, and the ability just to pull the rug from under you was absolutely phenomenal. So if you haven't read anything by Joe Nesbo, I would highly recommend you do so, because he is absolutely brilliant. So this series, I was really excited when this was announced, but I had my skepticism based on an experience I had with a movie based on one of his books called The Snowman. Now The Snowman with Michael Fassbender, that wasn't a bad movie. A lot of people panned it beyond belief. It's not as bad as many people make it out to be, but it was nothing compared to the book. It lacked that sense of thrill, it lacked that sense of suspense and mystery, and you could tell that Joe Nesbo was not directly involved with that movie. And so that was a letdown. I just thought as though it could have been just a standard, anyone could have written this story, and it's just a standard police procedure, and it lacked the magic of Joe Nesbo. But when I realised Joe Nesbo actually wrote this series, the script, I thought to myself, this is a recipe for absolute success. This is a Norwegian production, Norwegian language, so it's very local, and the Harry Hule series is very true and very valuable to Norway. And so I thought, alright, with all that love behind it and Joe Nesbo really directing, not directing it, but having a strong input into it, I thought to myself, please be as good as I want it to. And after watching Detective Hule, I would thankfully say that this is everything that I wanted from a Joe Nesbo experience. This is a show that is as close to the book as you would want. And so there's a few creative liberties thrown in there for the series, and so you don't necessarily have to have read up on the book to actually know what's going on. And so I thought as though there were some liberties in this series that I thought were a little bit disappointing, but overall I was really satisfied with what I got. This is a series that paints Harry Hule in a way that the books do, and this is the way that it wasn't really evident in The Snowman. So in this you have a really likeable guy, but he is torn apart from alcohol, and this is alcoholism, and this is how devastating it can be. It can turn really good people into monsters, and although he's not a monster, he's doing things that are dictated by alcohol, and so he's drinking himself to death because of all the trauma, but the trauma was associated to that alcoholism, and so it's a vicious cycle. And this character, when he's sober, you can see how brilliant he is, but then because he's got so many demons, he goes back to alcoholism. So he is a slave to his habit, and this is what makes him so fascinating, is that yes, he's a hero, but he's also an anti-hero at the same time. And so it's a character that's very realistic, and that's why you really relate to him in a way where I felt as though I wasn't watching a TV series. And so with Michael Fassbender in The Snowman, I always thought as though I'm watching a movie because it was very dull. Whereas this series, because it's a television series, it had enough to really flesh out that main character. And the main character is phenomenal, and I definitely feel as though Detective Hule really understood what the character of Harry Hule is. And that is because, as I said, of Joe Nesbo's supreme writing. When you think you know where it's going, at the last minute it pulls the rug from under you and you're faced with a completely different perspective of the story. And so just when you feel as though it's exhausting itself and you've figured it all out, then all of a sudden you feel as though you're watching a completely different movie all of a sudden. And so it takes you by surprise, and it's such a pleasant surprise because not a lot of authors can really do this. And so that's what I loved about this series, is that I kept feeling as though I knew what was going on. I knew who the killer was. I knew what the corruption within the Oslo Police Department was. But I kept feeling as though, alright, well, Joe Nesbo, he's the puppeteer and I'm the puppet. He's controlling everything. So not only was Harry Hule's character absolutely phenomenal, but you've got Tom Whaler. He's a character. He is another detective in this series that I just thought was absolutely fantastic. And when the Detective Whaler and Harry Hule go head to head, I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And so everything from the book I thought was portrayed fantastically well. And so if you are a fan of these books, this is absolutely essential viewing. It's a very, very dark experience. The violence is very, very hard-hitting, but it's not over the top. It's not gratuitous. It really serves the purpose for the dark sense that this series is set in. So you have the really high-impact violence, but you also have that psychology of discomfort, whether it's from Harry Hule's drinking problem or the killer in this series. I thought was very creepy, and the overall tone is very foreboding. It's very, very unnerving, and so psychologically and visually it really strikes a very strong character. And so if you're into that kind of thing, then this is a series that I would definitely recommend. The series is 9 parts, and I thought as though every episode really elevated itself off the other. It evolved itself, and I never got bored of what was going on. The trouble with a lot of series in my books is that I can't concentrate from the first one to the last, and I rarely get through a series, whereas this, I just couldn't wait for the next episode because it leaves you on edge, and it's a cliffhanger finish each episode. And so right up to the end I thought as though it was satisfying, and it's production, I could feel as though it was a lot of love. It's like Norway paying back everything that Joe Nesbo has done for this country, and I just absolutely love this series. So as I said, it is violent, but the violence does play a strong part. The acting is phenomenal from everyone involved. There's a lot of characters in this series, but it never becomes convoluted to the point where I couldn't follow it. It just adds a cat amongst the pigeons. And so just when you feel as though you're getting comfortable, there's a new avenue that this story takes that makes that discomfort return. And so that was something that I highly, highly appreciated. If I had issues with this series, right at the end, it does get a little bit Hollywoody, which is something I didn't like. As I said, it does take a few creative liberties from the book, and so I can understand that because they actually want to make this a proper television series, so future episodes coming in. And so I can understand why they've had that Hollywood sort of ending, because starting a series from book 5 is very difficult, and so if you're going to stay by the book word for word, it's going to be difficult to make this into the series. But because it has that creative liberty, I thought as though that was a smart move. But that was the only slight negative that I had in what was an absolutely fabulous experience. I love this show, and I hope that it continues, because yeah, if this is anything to go by, the installments in the future are going to be absolutely fantastic. So go out there and see. I'm going to give this series 4.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.